My daughter-in-law tapped the will and said, "Fair means family. Sign the retirement money over." 2 days later, HR read from a folder and said, "The plan pays the named beneficiary. That's the rule." The room didn't cheer. It just got quiet in the way truth does. People think fairness is splitting a pie in equal slices. I have learned fairness is making sure the right pie goes to the right table. My name is Ruth Ellison. I am 78, a morning person with a mug I've kept longer than some people keep opinions. My husband Martin wore plaid shirts until they formed a union and filed for recognition. We were married 49 years, which is enough time to practice being wrong and right and grateful in different orders. Martin died last winter as tidy as he lived, a list in his pocket and his tools put away. He left me a folder labeled Retirement, Beneficiaries and Rollovers. I know because the folder has been on the top shelf of the pantry for 5 years, beside the good vinegar and the honey that never crystallizes because we eat it steadily. We were paper people. Not fancy. Paper, working paper, receipts that prove we took life seriously, and forms that made strangers treat us like we belonged. My son Peter is 49, with shoulders that remember football, and a laugh that used to arrive faster. He married Lana 15 years ago. She is brilliant at calendars and bad at silence. If there is a meeting to be had, she will have it. If there is a form to summarize, she will put it in a deck with bullet points. If there is a way to make me feel like a project, she has found it twice. After the funeral, my house filled with casseroles and hands, some helpful, some hungry. People don't mean to be hungry in grief. It's just that sorrow makes appetite, for things that are not food. Control, especially. Lana cleaned my fridge and moved my spices, as if cumin had been a problem. She wrote tasks on the whiteboard like a foreman of mourning. "We'll meet with the attorney Thursday," she said. "We'll read the will and make a plan for the estate." She said every noun like it owed her rent. I did not argue. I have learned there is a time to sip coffee and let the people who like plans feel useful. Martin taught me to let the tide go out before I decide the depth of the water. Under the whiteboard, under the casseroles, under the condolences that arrived like polite rain, there was the folder, Retirement, Beneficiaries and Rollovers. I pulled it down when the house emptied. The first page was a letter from his old company's HR department, the one he never left because loyalty is a habit you practice until it feels like home. It said, "Keep your beneficiary designations current." The next page was the beneficiary form itself, neat in his careful capital letters. Primary, Ruth Ellison, spouse. Contingent, the Community Food Fund. That last part made me laugh. Martin always said if you couldn't eat your money in an emergency, you had the wrong kind. We had planned to leave something to the pantry that fed us the year Peter broke his arm, and I lost a week of work to worry. Behind that were copies of the Summary Plan Description, a book pretending to be a pamphlet, and instructions from the Record Keeper, a company whose website always looked like airports, busy and unhelpful. There were also notes in Martin's handwriting. "If I go first, you can roll to your IRA. Ask for spousal rollover. Don't let anyone bully you." Bully was his word for people who pretend volume is authority. The day before the will, reading. Lana came early with a clipboard. She put it on my table like a placemat for power. "I made a list," she said. "Expenses, assets, the 401k. We'll put all the retirement money into the estate account and distribute fairly." She smiled the way people do when they have confused kindness with control. "The 401k doesn't go into the estate," I said, calmly. "That is my superpower. It goes where the beneficiary form says." The will says family, she said, tapping it like you tap a sleeping cat who might scratch you. I'm sure Martin meant all the accounts. We should do what's fair. What's fair is what's filed, I said. We can talk, but we will talk to HR first. She stared at me like I'd suggested we consult a dictionary during a spelling bee. We'll see, she said. People say we'll see when they mean I am about to test you. I made a call the next morning to the number on the old letter. HR still had Linda at the desk, the woman whose voice has been soothing people since dial tones were a thing. Mrs. Ellison, she said when I explained. I'm so sorry. Let me pull the file. I heard pages, not clicks. A human being finding paper. It's a sound I trust. Here it is, she said, after a minute that let my heart practice patience. Beneficiary designation on file. Primary, Ruth Ellison. Contingent, Community Food Fund. We have a more recent address for you, but the names are the same. And the will? I asked. The plan pays the named beneficiary regardless of the will, she said, as if she had said it 1,000 times and saved 1,000 families from 1,000 fights. It's in the summary, plan description. We can email or mail the claim packet. You'll need a certified death certificate. We'll walk you through it. Walk me through it, I said, and felt something in my ribcage stand up. Lana arrived that afternoon ready to summarize my own life to me. I talked to my cousin, she said. The attorney. He says the will governs over all and we can sweep accounts into the estate to do what's fair. I've already prepared a family spreadsheet. She smiled. The spreadsheet kind. All straight lines and righteous columns. Linda at HR says the plan pays the beneficiary on file, I said. That's me. Then the contingent is the pantry, if I predecease. Your cousin may invoice his opinions, but the plan doesn't buy them. She blinked like truth had flicked the light switch. This feels unfair, she said softly, a new tone. Not a negotiation, a bewilderment. Unfair would be ignoring what Martin wrote in his own hand, I said. He loved you. He loved Peter. He loved me. He loved paper because he knew people forget and paper remembers. The will reading happened in an office that smelled like legal pads and lemon cleaner. Mr. Reyes, the attorney, read a document that had less drama than a soap opera and more dignity than most dinner conversations. It left small things to people who would love them and said, the residue to Ruth, which is a phrase that sounds like a kitchen accident, but means everything, left after specific gifts. Lana raised her hand as if this were a classroom, and she had extra credit tattooed on her bracelet. What about the 401k and IRA? She asked. Mr. Reyes folded his hands like a man who had been practicing gentle news for a long time. If those have beneficiary designations, he said, they pay to the named persons. They don't come through the will. But that's money, not a necklace, she said. She wasn't being cruel. She was being newly educated. Paper doesn't care what fits in your hand, he said. It cares what fits in the rule. Peter looked at me, then at Lana, then at the carpet. We didn't know, he said. I believed him. Grief is a fog that makes simple maps look like mazes. I took my claim packet home. It asked for facts, not feelings. Name, SSN, address, account number, certified death certificate, copy of driver's license, voided check for direct deposit. It asked if I wanted a spousal rollover to my IRA or a lump sum. Martin had left me notes about taxes in his own sideways handwriting. Rollover avoids current tax. Only take what you need. The market is not a personality test. My husband, who believed in torque wrenches and salutations, had also believed in future me. That evening, Peter came without Lana. He stood awkwardly in the doorway with a bag of groceries and an apology he didn't know how to plate. "Mom," he said, "I'm sorry. I thought Dad wanted us to do things together." "Together is kind," I said. "Together does not mean taking the wrench from the person who knows which bolt it fits." We cooked eggs and ate out of bowls because the plates were too formal for the conversation we needed. He told me he was afraid. He said money spooks him now like a dog that hasn't been walked. He said Lana is good at plans, but bad at waiting. He said he doesn't want to be the son who turned grief into a petition. I told him we would make a plan that made sense for actual people, not just columns. I told him I would help with the student loan of his son, Milo, if we could call it. Help and not inheritance. Words matter. I told him I would pay for the roof that had been threatening to introduce rain to the hallway. I told him Lana could help, me with the claim packet if she could do it without calling it her project. Lana came the next day. She didn't bring her clipboard. She brought tea in a thermos like a flag of truce. We spread the forms on the table. She read the instructions aloud like a person making penance to paper. Attach certified death certificate. Include beneficiary form if you have a copy. State whether you want rollover or lump sum. Rollover, I said. To my IRA. We'll take a small distribution for the roof and the bench. Bench? She asked. Martin's bench, I said. He always said the block needed a place for people to sit and gather their choices. We'll buy one and put it under the maple. A plaque that says, "Sit, your day will wait." She cried a little. She covered it by reading the fax number like it was emotional. We mailed and uploaded and checked boxes. HR called to confirm receipt. The record keeper's portal, which had been designed by someone who doesn't believe in grandmothers, finally agreed I existed. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived like a grown-up doing its job. Your claim has been approved. Funds will be sent via direct rollover to your IRA and via ACH to your checking for the elected distribution. That night, Lana did what anxiety does when it has lost its favorite argument. She made a new one. She arrived with a disclaimer of interest printout she found on a legal website. If you disclaim, she said, it all goes to Peter. It would be fair. She looked more pleading than pushy, which is progress that still requires boundaries. Disclaimers are the right tool in some stories, I said. Not in mine. Martin named me. He expected me to live on it, and to give with it, and to teach with it. If I disclaim because it upsets your spreadsheet, I'm not being fair. I'm being flimsy. She winced, but she listened. Listening is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger your family gets. The payment came on a Tuesday. Of course, it did. Tuesdays are when the world does its errands. The rollover hit my IRA at the credit union, and the ACH for the roof landed in checking like a small, sensible bird. I stood at the counter and thanked the countertop because prayer needs surfaces. I wrote 3 checks that day. One to Henderson, roofing, because a woman has a right to a dry kitchen. One to the Community Food Fund, because a promise is a way of telling time the truth. One to Peter and Lana's roofer, because they had discovered their roof believed in rain as much as mine did. 4 materials, I wrote in the memo, and Lana underlined it with a grateful laugh. We also wrote something else. Rules. I am a grandmother. I cook rules the way I cook soup. Slow, with patience. Seasoned with what I've learned. Kitchen table rules. We taped them inside the pantry. Paper before panic. When a question involves nouns like will, plan, title, or beneficiary. We read and we call the place that knows, not the person who guesses. Together is not confiscation. Help is help. We do not rename other people's choices as fairness. We ask for help. We do not demand donation. We feed people when we talk money. Soup lowers voices better than rules do. We write love in forms, as well as in cards. We fill our own beneficiary forms before the end of the month. I scheduled an appointment with Miguel at the credit union. A man who looks like taxes never scared him because he met them in alleys when he was young and convinced them to behave. He helped me set beneficiaries on my accounts. Primary, Ruth Ellison, when applicable. Contingent where it made sense. For my IRA now in my name. Primary, Ruth, me. Well, that's circular, so primary, my living trust or the charity for a portion. Contingent, Peter for a specific percentage. We kept it simple. Miguel printed the forms. I signed. He stamped. The copier hummed like a content cat. If you want a sacred sound in your life, make it the sound of a beneficiary form being filed. We then built something practical and pretty. We started the Saturday skills table in Martin's honor, not to launder my virtue, to launder fear out of our neighborhood by teaching ordinary skills. How to read a pay stub, how to fill a beneficiary designation without crying, how to ask for a raise without apologizing first, how to make a pot of beans, and a week of lunches. We did it in the church hall because it has chairs that understand different sizes of courage. Lana printed checklists that didn't patronize. Peter set up folding tables like a man who knows engineering is sometimes just angles and kindness. Before the first Saturday, Pressure made a last visit. A cousin I hadn't seen since he tried to sell me vitamins at a funeral came by with advice. Family should not have to ask, he said. Money should flow. That's how Uncle Martin would have wanted it. Uncle Martin wanted forms filed. Correctly, I said. He wanted decency. He wanted roofs that keep out weather. If you need groceries or help with a resume, you can come on Saturday. If you need me to disobey the form he filled in his own hand, you need me to be someone else. He harumphed, a sound only men over a certain age are issued. I handed him a flyer for the skills table, and a jar of pickles because my grandmother taught me never to let a person leave empty-handed unless they insist on it. At the first skills table, the room smelled like paper and coffee and nervousness. Miguel from the credit union drew a big rectangle on a whiteboard and wrote, "Who gets what?" at the top. He explained beneficiary versus will in grandma language. The will is a choir, he said. It needs a conductor, the court. And sometimes it sings later than you want. The beneficiary form is a soloist with its own microphone. It sings now. If you want the soloist to sing the song you like, give it the right lyrics. People laughed because humor is a delivery system for medicine. A young woman asked about her old 401k. She forgot when she changed jobs. Miguel told her how to find it and how to fill the beneficiary, so her mother would not have to wrestle with her ex if Lightning ever misbehaved. An older man asked how to make sure his nephew didn't have to go to court for the car. We gave him the phrase to ask at the DMV, transfer on death for vehicle title. A couple asked about bank accounts. I taught them the words POD and ITF and wrote them down like a recipe card. We did not fix everything. We fixed enough to change Tuesday for 3 families. A woman cried quietly and signed a beneficiary form with trembling hands. Lana fetched tissues like a nurse. Peter stood at the coffee urn and told a man 20 years younger than him that it's okay to be afraid of paperwork. It's not okay to let that fear make other people pay for it. As for my own money, I did what Martin and Math would approve. I set up an automatic transfer to the pantry every month because giving is easier to do on purpose. I set a small scholarship in Martin's name for trade school tools, wrenches and boots and the kind of things that do not look like opportunity until you need them, and then they look like doors. I kept enough for my roof, my meds, and my porch. The porch is an expense you don't claim on taxes, but you should. It keeps neighbors honest and days slow enough to talk to. Lana changed, not all at once, but in increments, like a dimmer switch on a room that deserves better lighting. She confessed one evening while we stacked chairs after the skills table that she had been raised on a diet of scarcity and comparison. "My father used to say if you don't grab, you won't get," she said. "It took me until now to understand that getting by grabbing is a way of not having. We all learn our verbs from somewhere," I said. "Choose better ones when you can." She nodded. "I want to put our own beneficiaries in order," she said. "I don't want Milo to inherit my panic." "Bring your forms Saturday," I said. "We'll fill them with what you love, not what you fear." A week later, Peter brought a small box to the house. "Dad would want it on your desk," he said. Inside was a plaque Miguel had made because his wife runs a trophy shop. On the side, it read, "Paper Before Panic, Martin and Ruth." I placed it next to the mug and the pen and the little brass letter opener that looks like a sword and is very good at opening envelopes and not at all good at cutting ties. Some of you will want to know if there was punishment for people who tried to make my grief a savings plan. There wasn't. There was education. There were rules. There was soup. There were forms, now filled correctly, that made us a better family than a windfall could have. Lana and I became allies. She still has a clipboard, but it mostly holds shopping lists and recipes. She still talks too much when she's scared, but now she names the fear instead of aiming it. Peter still avoids hard conversations for one. Cup of coffee too long. But he shows up with a wrench when the neighbor's sink confesses a sin. Milo still rolls his eyes at adjectives like quiet justice. But he came to the skills table and helped a man download a pay stub app and looked taller after. On a fall evening, we installed Martin's bench. The maple made shade like a promise. The plaque caught the light and read the room. Rosa from next door brought empanadas that tasted like learning how to be happy again. A few people sat who had been standing too long in their own lives. Lana leaned over and whispered, "I used to think money made security. Now I think security is knowing what to do when the money moves." "Security is a bench," I said. "Somewhere to sit until your legs remember you." I know some of you are here for steps. Here they are, the recipe version, the beneficiary recipe for ordinary people. Ingredients: 1 plan, 4 oat yuan K, 403B IRA, 1 beneficiary form, 1 pen, 1 honest look at who you love. Steps: find your plan's summary plan description, SPD. Look up beneficiary, request your current beneficiary on file. Don't guess. Update the form if love or life has moved furniture. Sign, date, submit. Keep a copy. Tell the person you named. Surprises are for cakes, not claims. Repeat this for every account with its own rules. Bank, POD, brokerage, TOD, insurance, beneficiary, car, TOD where allowed, house, trust, or TOD, deed where allowed. Serving suggestion: a bowl of soup and a promise not to use the word fair when you mean mine. A month after the funds landed, HR called to check if the process had been decent. I told Linda it had been better than decent. It had been human. She laughed and said I should come work the phones. I said the skills table was my call center. "We're feeding people paperwork and sandwiches," I said. "It's catching on. She said if we needed a guest speaker, she'd bring a stack of SPDs and a smile. Sometimes when I am alone, I talk to Martin. I tell him the roof holds. I tell him Peter fixed the drawer that gasped. I tell him Lana says thank you now, in places where please used to go to die. I tell him Milo is learning the difference between income and ego. I tell him the pantry doesn't run out of beans anymore, because a man in town started giving $1 every Friday after he heard the story about a folder on a shelf. I tell him the bench has hosted 3 reunions and 1 awkward apology. I tell him I am tired sometimes and happy often. I tell him I miss him in the way a house misses hammer sounds. If you're listening and someone is saying, "Be fair, sign it over," ask yourself if their definition of fair includes the form your person signed when they were alive and lucid and loving you. Ask yourself whether surrendering what is yours will make the world kinder or just your kitchen quieter for a week. Ask yourself if a skills table in your town might do more good than a fight in your family chat. Here is my last piece of advice, and it is not legal. It is grandma. Write down your love in a way clerks and future you can read. Keep your copies where the honey is. Name the people who actually show up. Feed them now, not in some hypothetical after. When the time comes, let the plan sing the song you taught it. Then open your door and your calendar and your pantry and build a life that looks like common sense from the porch. If anyone tells me again, the will says family, be fair. I will smile, pour soup, and say, the form says Ruth, be kind. Then I'll ask if they want to help set up chairs on Saturday. That's where the real math lives. Ruth Ellison.